Hey everyone, welcome back to the SEL. So in today's video, if you've watched my channel for a while now, you will know that I've kind of mentioned in quite a few videos that I have a few custom projects that I'd like to get started on. So in today's video, this will be a part 1 for one of those projects because I'm still waiting on a couple of parts to come in, but I did want to go ahead and give you guys kind of a progress report on what I've done so far. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. So what is on the workbench this time? So I want to do a few different types of custom sound cars. And what I envisioned at first, and I'll do my best to kind of show this later on in the video, but I'll kind of talk about it here first, is I've kind of wanted to do kind of my own station sounds car, kind of with its own interface on an app or some other external device. That way I can control it just like I can my 20th Century Limited car. And what I found that it's not, I don't know if it's definitely possible. It's just that right now, in the short amount of time that I've worked on it, I found a different way that allows me to have so much more control over the device itself, but not quite in the way I was looking to present it, if that makes sense. And later on in the video, I'll kind of show what my initial plan was and what I'm doing now. So, although that being said, here is what will be at the center of the sound car, or at least the first version of my sound cars. This is a Raspberry Pi 02W. And I know I just said a bunch of letters and numbers there, so let me explain what this thing is. This thing is basically a microcomputer, and you can kind of see it is very, very small. And I got it to go inside of my custom Southern Eagle Lines combine car. And the plan is, since I've decided that car will be numbered 1982 Southern Pride, because in 1982, Georgia Southern University, a year after starting their football program back up with Irk Russell, decided they needed a marching band to go with their football team. And what did they call it? They called it Southern Pride. And if you know anything about me, I was in Southern Pride. I marched Southern Pride from 2015 to 2018 as an alto saxophone. And it was probably my favorite part of college as a whole, all 4 years. I made a whole lot of friends in Southern Pride, and there's still a lot of friends that I keep in contact with daily. I mean, you just heard the Discord message back there. I can't say for sure if it was someone from that group, but I've made a bunch of friends from being in Southern Pride, and they're probably still some of the best friends I've ever made in terms of college buddies, because we had so much in common. We did so much together, so many trips, so many shenanigans that you get into as a band and as a bunch of buddies. And yeah, it was probably one of my favorite part of college. So I didn't want to, as part of the custom train, include a bunch of other famous names that relate to Southern as a whole. Like the observation car will be Alan E. Paulson, which was the individual who donated a bunch of money to build the stadium at Georgia Southern, which is Paulson Stadium. But we'll get into those kind of cars later whenever I complete them, and we'll do a video on those as a whole. But let's move on to how I got this thing working, and I'll show you guys how I got it started, how I uploaded the operating system, and we'll go from there. How about that? So the first thing we'll talk about is how I got this to work just like a normal computer. So the Raspberry Pi Corporation, the people who make these things, kind of market them as desktop computers, and these can be desktop computers. I personally wouldn't use it because I do a bunch of different things that this particular Pi can't handle, but they do make more powerful versions of these computers that cost a bit much more money. I believe this one costs maybe 25 bucks. I don't exactly remember. And then the SD card was another, this is a 32 gigabyte SanDisk card. I think that was another $10-15. And I did have to get a mini HDMI adapter to go to HDMI so that way I could, see what was going on. And I did have to get a USB hub, special USB hub, so that way I can control it and everything. But it's been a pretty fun project so far. And you'll notice that there are pins up here, little holes, and those are for, they're here. They are for pins, which I'll need for the next part of the project, which is the last part that I'm waiting on. So, and in the next part of the video, not this video, but the next video on this project, we will be soldering these pins directly to the board. Right now, they're separate, but in the second video on this project, we will be soldering this to the board. So, as I've been talking, I'm sure you noticed in one of these two corners, I kind of put the process of adding the operating system to the SD card. And while that continues to work, I'm going to go get my Microsoft Surface to kind of show you guys what my original plan for the interface was supposed to look like. So I got a Surface here, but before I kind of show off the interface and everything, I kind of want to tell a little funny story about the development of the software. It was my initial plan to kind of hand code everything. Now, coding is kind of what I learned at Georgia Southern. It's not what I intended to do and everything, that I couldn't exactly have, there wasn't a path for me to learn in IT what I wanted to go into IT for. But out of the three options at the time that I had, I believe it was web development, which is what I did. I think there was a data path and a network path. And I chose the web development path because it sounded most interesting to me. But while I was hand coding it, and I was kind of trying to get the interface working right and everything like that, and I got to the point where I was ready to, get the sound part of the code working. So what I decided to do was what every IT person does when they're coding, is Google it and see if someone else has already done it, or at least finding the code that you're looking for, so that way you can just throw it in to be done with it. So using my Google Foo skills, I was actually able to find someone who had done everything for it. Like the part that I had already done plus the part I was looking to do next. So what did I do? I just ripped that off the internet and repurposed it for what I needed to do, because I felt like that was the best option. Because why would I try to just rip bits and pieces from that one when I could just reformat that and it just work without me having to figure out, okay, they labeled this, they labeled that, let me change it on either that side or this side and make sure everything works, when I knew I could just take the whole thing from off GitHub and I knew it would work. All I'd have to do is just change what the actual sounds are and I'd be done. So just an interesting, funny little thing. But yeah, let's move on to the code here. So I use Visual Studio Code to kind of code everything. I like how it looks. It color codes everything, so that way I kind of know what I'm looking at whenever I'm coding it. But I'm not going to play a whole lot because I'm afraid I might get copyright struck, because it is the band playing. I'll probably play maybe a couple of seconds here and there of one or two of them. But my plan was for, and if you've seen my LED car video, I kind of wanted to do the same thing. And I don't remember right off the top of my head if I included video from the phone interface of how I controlled it, but that was my initial plan, was to kind of mirror that. So I have a color-coded, or not color-coded, but I have a color interface here that matches Georgia Southern and Southern Pride. So up top here, I have our tradition cadence, which we would play whenever we were walking onto the field during pregame, and a bunch of other times, like when we're marching in a parade or something like that. I have the fanfare and the first part of the whole fight song. The fanfare we really only played on the field during pregame, if I remember correctly. And then we played a bunch of stands tunes on the field during pregame. Played Georgia on My Mind. We also did, the Star Spangled Banner and things like that. I didn't include that because I felt like that'd be kind of weird just playing that out of context. But I can add that if I wanted to, which is kind of cool about this thing. This is scalable or reprogrammable. So I can add as many sounds to this as I want as long as it doesn't fill the space on the hard drive. So if I really wanted to, I could take this 32 gigabyte SD card out and put one that's 500 gigabytes in, and I could have as many sounds as I want. I wouldn't be limited to what's already in the car from Lionel or from whoever next decides they want to do sound cars and O scale. And this is scalable, so I can make this bigger. So I'll play a quick one here. I'm not sure how well it's going to come into the video. I'll make sure my volume's maxed out. I'll play it for a couple of seconds and then I'll stop it because, again, I don't want this video to get copyright struck for this. But all right, let's do the cadence. So it's playing off the surface and it actually sounds pretty good because, and I'll go ahead and stop it. So my first year in Southern Pride, we did something called Southern Pride in Concert. And we went to one of the local churches in the area and we used their sanctuary as a place to play all of our music for the people of Statesboro. And that was the last year they did it, to my knowledge, in 2015, because I don't remember doing one in 2016. We definitely didn't do one in 17 or 18. But that was, to my knowledge, that was the last year we did it. It was a whole lot of fun when we would just stand in front of a bunch of people in our uniforms and go through all of the music we played that year, and including stuff like that. And that's where I got this from. Now, unfortunately, I was not able to find one from 2015, which would have been my freshman year, because I really wanted to have some stuff on there from when I was in the band. And it's still my plan to kind of go through and find some of that stuff. There's still video of stuff like that from when I was in band on the internet. It's just not as high quality as the recordings from the Southern Pride in Concert. Now, I was able to find a good bit of the stuff I played from a Southern Pride in Concert event, but unfortunately it was the year before I joined Southern Pride. So all the stuff that I have on here is stuff that I did play in the band, but unfortunately I cannot find, as of yet, a very high quality or as high of a quality sound as I could from those events. So with all that being said, I was really happy with the way the code was working. It was working fine. Like I said, it was scalable, so that way I could make it work on as many sounds as I could possibly wanted. There were one or two graphical issues that I would have to figure out later on. The stop sounds button at the bottom would automatically pop you up to the back of the page, or hitting any of these sounds would pop you to the back of the page. But those were just small little bugs that I would have to figure out later. But I realized something over the weekend when I was starting this project. And it was that even if I did figure out a way to, and it is very possible, I had already figured out a way to make this work. If I could connect to this with my phone and have it say automatically pop up with that page as soon as I connect to it on my phone in Safari, because I have an iPhone, and I could tell it to play any one of those sounds. The problem is it would not play off this computer, it would play off my phone. And the point is for it to come from the car, just like the Lionel Station Sounds cars or the Freight Sounds cars. So my solution to that was to take one of the ESP32 boards that I ordered as replacements, just in case one of the LED car ones that I bought died again. Here it is too, I'll take it out of the bag. So my plan was to make this thing, come on, open up. Make it its own access point that both the computer and my phone could connect to, and then use another piece of software that's on the computer and on my phone to remotely control the entire computer. So let's check that out. All right, so we're in front of the TV here, and I wanted to move over here so that way you guys can kind of see it on a bigger screen, because I don't have a way of video capturing this and have sound yet. So I'll kind of show you guys how it's all connected and how it all works once it's inside the passenger car. So this is just so that way I can connect to the TV. It's a mini HDMI to HDMI adapter. I have a small little OTG USB hub here that'll connect to USB on the computer. I'll connect it to HDMI here in a minute. And right now it's running off a battery that I modified to have a extended power button, so that way I can kind of get it from outside of the car. This is the same kind of battery that I use in the LED car. Now, this was not my idea to do something like this. And Travis Moody, the guy who built the LED car, he did this for the LED cars. And I asked him if I could kind of crack it open and kind of study how it works. So that way I could do my own kind of cars. So I ripped his idea from that. I bought my own batteries and I safely modified the battery so that way I could have my own set of batteries that power things. Now, my eventual plan is to have this car in particular run off of track power. And I'll have to do some little bit of gymnastics to figure that out. And once I kind of shut this off, we'll move back over to the workbench and I'll kind of do a final little demonstration on how I want it to look. We'll wrap up the video and then we'll wait for the last part in order to make all the sound work. Now, I'm not ready yet to make it work off of track power, but my goal right now is just to make it work. So with all that being said, let me hook up the computer to the TV and we'll kind of show how I have this thing controlled right now. And before I forget, because I did forget, this is the ESP32 board that will give it a Wi-Fi signal for both the Raspberry Pi and my phone to connect to. It also goes to the USB hub here, which I thought was kind of a, not a toot my own horn, but an ingenious way of figuring this thing out, because the whole crux of this thing working is it always has to have some sort of internet connection so my phone can connect to it. And while it would work here at my house or somewhere else where there's an internet connection, I'm not always going to be able to do that. So like, for example, when I take this car to a club event where we're out in the middle of a railway museum and that railway museum has no internet, the car won't work because I won't be able to connect to it, because then I was relying on the location Wi-Fi. But if I program this just to put off a local signal, all I have to do is connect the computer and my phone to this network, and then while it's not a true internet connection, I'm still connected to the two devices in the same way I would be anywhere else, which is all I really need. So it gets power off of the computer itself, so that way when the computer has power, the internet connection has power. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out before we move on to powering up the computer. But let's go ahead and power it up. And I'm plugging in the battery to the computer. So as soon as I plug this in, it should turn on. Yep, there it goes. It'll take it a second. Yep, there it is. Now, once I prove to myself this works the way I want it to, and that's okay, it does that anyway. I have another car that I want to do that won't quite run off of track power, because I kind of would rather this one run off a battery. But again, stay tuned for all the projects that I have in the future with these little mini computers. All right, guys, so the computer's up and going now, and as you can see, you have the Southern Pride logo here, and my initial plan was to have it just be a Central Georgia engine, and maybe when I do these in the future, I might have one there if I do a Central Georgia theme one. But I figured it was just appropriate to have the Southern Pride logo be there because this is a Southern Pride car. And using the mouse that I have here connected to the computer, I'm going to move over to the network connection. And I'm not sure how well you can see that. It says SEL 1982, and that's the name of the connection here. So I chose that because obviously it means Southern Eagle Lines 1982. The name of the car, or yeah, the road name and the name number of the car. So the way this works is I have a virtual server running on this computer that listens for active connections. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you the settings of my phone, and I'm going to look behind the camera as I'm doing this to make sure you guys can see it. So moved up here to the cameras, that way you guys can see. I'm not sure it'll focus there. Come on, there it goes. SEL 1982. Now you'll notice it says no internet connection, and in this case, that's okay. All I really need to be able to do is be connected to the same network that the Raspberry Pi is connected to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open an app called Real VNC Viewer. And what that is it allows me to kind of control the computer completely from my phone. And I've set up a VNC server on here so that way the phone has something to connect to. So again, I'm going to kind of move behind the camera here so I can kind of see. You'll see here, I have a computer here as Southern SEL 1982 named Southern Pride. So whenever I click on it, it asks me for a password. So I'm going to put in the password. And I'm going to hit connect. And now I'm controlling the computer completely from my phone, just like a trackpad. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit, that way I can see the whole thing. So you'll see here in the corner, there's the network connections up there, and there they are up here. So I'm going to move over to the audio folder here, which has all the sounds that I currently have programmed into my soundboard code. And it does take it a second to open because this is a slower computer. It doesn't have the same amount of RAM as your normal computer. And so you'll see I have all the audio there, and I'll go ahead and go over here to my taskbar and open VLC player, because that's the way it runs. It takes a second to open, so I'm just going to go ahead and open it manually, because whenever I click on one of these, it does open VLC. But I've learned through my testing that it's easier to go ahead and open it up whenever I start before I open this. That way, while I'm waiting for the folder to open, VLC is already opening in the background. So as I said earlier in the video, doing it this way allows me to do so much more than I was originally planning with the first sound card. Because you remember I said that there were some bugs in the code where the screen would kind of jump around whenever I would hit buttons, and to mitigate that, I limited myself with the amount of sounds, which was kind of counterintuitive for what I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to scroll down the list of sounds and it stay there, just like if you go to a soundboard website and you click a soundboard button, it stays there, plays the sound through your computer. But what I found out was, while this may look a bit more clunky, if that makes sense of a way to do it, the fact that I can control the entire computer, just like if I was sitting in front of it from my phone, and still have the same effect that I was looking for, makes it a whole lot easier for me to add all the sounds that I was originally planning on doing anyway, and still have that constant being able to move through and play whatever sound I wanted to anyway. So I'm going to minimize this real quick because all I really need to be is open. So we'll do, I don't think I'll get copyright struck if I do a Who's House. So this is literally just sound from Paulson Stadium at a game. So I will double click that. And I double click by just double tapping on the screen. Oh, you probably can't hear that because the audio on my TV is turned way down. So I'll wait for that to finish because I can hear it. I'll turn it up a little bit. 30 is probably good. And we'll do this. Try it again. Now, if I get copyright struck for that, I'll be shocked. So, yeah, so I'll see if I can do one more. I'll play a little bit of it because I'll be afraid to get copyright struck. Let's go ahead and have it open so that way I can stop it quick. Can I drag? Oh, I don't want to open big. Yeah, as you can see, I'm still kind of learning the controls for the touch interface. And I'll just do it this way. I'll do rah rah because we called rah rah our entire stands tune portion of pregame. We just called it rah rah. It was called that when I was a freshman, and I didn't question it, so I have no idea why we called it that, but it is what it is. And I'll stop it right here at the end, or I'd be a even up. So yeah, that's the sound card. Come on. But as you can see here, I have a bunch of options, and eventually I'll be able to scroll through them like I was originally planning on. So that's kind of all I have right now in terms of being able to show you guys the actual computer itself. So let's quickly move back over to the bench, and I'll kind of show you what I'm trying to squeeze inside of this passenger car. All right, guys, so we're back at the workbench here, and this is the inside of one of the passenger cars. This is the inside of SEL 1982. So as you can see, I don't have a whole lot of space to work with, which is what I'm trying to figure out. So what I'm gonna do is, and I'm just straightening out some bins here, I'm gonna put 2 of these 4 ohm 3 watt speakers in the car. And again, I'm bending out some tabs because these were speakers I'm using for another project that I've been working on for a while. I just haven't had time to get the parts because while I was testing, some of the parts decided to stop working. And now that I have this way of doing it, I'm waiting to see if this way works better before I retry what I've already been trying to do with the other way. I'm not sure I explained that very well, but I'm waiting to see if this way of doing what I want to do works way better than the way I was already doing it, if that makes sense, before I move on to trying the old way again. So you can see that the speakers already take up a good bit of room in the car here, and the wires won't be nearly this long. They're just wires that are already soldered to the speakers here. And I'll have the Pi here. This is just a 3D printed representation that I used before I had the actual Pi in my hand to kind of figure out placement. So I'm just going to put that there for now. It won't be there on the final product. What I'll probably end up doing is 3D printing something, because I have a 3D printer here right next to me on the workbench. It's an Elegoo Neptune 4 Max, I think is what it is. And I'll have, this is another ESP32 board. This is actually the board that fried inside the LED car, so I had to replace it. So it's good enough for what I need it to do for this particular demonstration. I'll have this in here, and I'll also have to have the USB hub, and I'm already working on a way to minimize that thing's footprint. And if I want to have the board or the car run off track power, I'm gonna need room over here to have a bridge rectifier, a resistor, and a DC to DC converter, so that way I can step down the voltage down to from 18 volts AC down to 5 volts DC, because that's what the computer runs off of. So it may be a while before it fits in here the way I want it to. And as I'm working on it, I'll probably post updates on it. My original plan was to have just one speaker in here, but I found out that the bonnet is what it's called. Well, sometimes they're called a hat for these kind of things because it looks like it's wearing a hat whenever you do it. But because it's so small, the company who made it decided to call it a bonnet. But that's really not important, but what's called what it's called. But my initial plan, and I'd already 3D printed this, was to use one speaker, but that was before I knew that the part that I was going to use did not support mono sound. So my initial plan was to have this 3D printed part sit here, hold the speaker, and then have a spot for the Pi, the bonnet whenever it sits to it, and the bonnet will be the amplifier for the speakers. So the wire for the speakers would run here, and it would be connected right there. And then I'd have plenty of room over here to 3D print something for the other pieces to convert the track power. But now that it has to run off of stereo, I have a little bit less room to kind of do all that. But I'm working on a way to just test the viability of the whole thing on that bulkhead car that I have on my shelf. It has a lot more room, but I'm using the bulkhead car and a battery and all that stuff to make sure that this will work the way I want it to. And then once I figure that out, I'll figure out a way to make it fit in roughly a third of the size. So yeah, that's the sound car as it is now. So if you want to see the second part of this video, like I said, the part that I need to get the speakers working should be here on Wednesday, which will be the video or the day this video goes up on the channel. So if you're interested in seeing how that works, make sure you're subscribed, and make sure you let me know down below what you guys think of this. And I hope you guys kind of like this different video than what I normally do. I've always had an interest in computers and things like that, so it's nice to finally be able to kind of combine my two hobbies here of model trains and computers. And if this works like I hope it will, and so far it's shown that it will, this will open up an entirely new door of custom projects for me to do. The LED car is something kind of opened my eyes to what's possible in terms of model trains and technology. Doing custom cars like that is something I never really thought about, but when I saw that car and I got it in my hands and I figured out how it works, or I guess I learned how it works, rather someone else already figured it out, I knew I could take that and run with it and do a bunch of other stuff that I never even considered was possible. But if this works, like I said, there's a whole bunch of stuff that the gears are already turning up here. So if you want to see what the gears turn up and turn out, make sure you're following me on Instagram and Facebook, and make sure you're subscribed down below. Let me know what you guys think of this. Let me know what you guys like to see in a sound car, and maybe I'll do a completely custom sound car that has nothing to do with like a marching band or something like that. Maybe I'll just do a fun soundboard, and maybe if I have enough ideas or something like that, maybe I'll come October I'll bring a sound car that It's just stupid stuff like fart sounds or something like that. I don't know. But if you guys like the video, make sure you let me know down in the comments down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Like the video, and I'll see you guys next week.